I made this lusciously lathery shampoo bar in about 5 minutes with no fancy equipment, using just 6 ingredients, 3 of which can be found at the grocery store. I'll show you how I did it so you can make your very own high-quality shampoo bars, and I'll teach you 3 easy ways to customize the bars so you can create perfectly personalized hair care. So, what do you need? And how do you transform those ingredients into a rock-hard bar that positively erupts with lather? We'll get to that soon, but first you need a wee bit of gear. Most of what you'll need is standard DIY stuff. A digital scale, a bowl, some spoons, and some smaller bowls to weigh ingredients into. But you'll also need 2 specific pieces of equipment that you might not already have if you're a newer maker. For optimal mixing, grab yourself a pair of nitrile or latex gloves. And this is so we can get in there with our hands without digging shampoo bits out from underneath our fingernails for days. This next item is essential so you don't end up choking and gagging as you work. One of the ingredients we're using today is incredibly floaty and will make a beeline for your nose and mouth if given the slightest opportunity. So to prevent a seriously unpleasant coughing fit, you need a tight fitting respirator. This is not a job for a cloth mask. You need something that seals really well on your face. Mine is from Lee Valley and I love it, but any hardware store should sell something similar. And then just one more thing, this is optional, but I think it's the way to go with this formulation. A small, hard-sided mold. This can be something fun like this cute flower mold I'll be using, or something as simple as a 1/4 cup measuring cup. Okay, now that we're gloved and masked up, we can get on to making. We're going to mix up a 240 gram batch today, which will make several shampoo bars, though just how many will really depend on how big each bar is. We'll begin by weighing out our 2 dry ingredients. The first one is the source of the suds. It's where the cleansing, bubbling goodness comes from. Weigh out 144 grams sodium lauryl sulfoacetate, also known as SLSA. This is a gentle, eco-cert surfactant that creates the most gorgeous, dense, luxurious lather. And it is a solid, taking the form of a fine white powder. Now, this solidness is really important. It's a huge part of why the finished bar is solid. You absolutely cannot use a liquid surfactant instead of a solid one here, or you're just gonna make a sudsy slop instead of a solid bar. This ingredient is why we're wearing our respirator. SLSA is to your mouth as my dog Lottie is to a squirrel in our yard, in that SLSA will make a beeline straight for your airways the second you open the bag. It is incredibly lightweight and floaty, and inhaling it is unbelievably unpleasant. So don't skip that respirator. Up next, for even more solidness, you'll need 33.6 grams rice flour. This is a super silky fine powder that is really similar to cornstarch in terms of skin feel. You can pick this up at the grocery store. The rice flour functions as another solid ingredient that won't melt, but it's cheaper than SLSA and doesn't further amp up the cleansing power of the bar, which is unnecessary and could make the bar too strong. Now, you might be wondering if you could use a different solid powdered surfactant like SCI, or a different fine starchy powder like cornstarch, and the answer is kinda, but we're going to talk more about that later. The rest of the ingredients are wet things that will transform those fine white powders into a smooth, workable dough, like Play-Doh, but this stuff tastes even worse. These ingredients are where we'll get into those easy customizations that you can make. To amp up the lather and make the overall bar milder, you'll need 24 grams of Cocamidopropyl Betaine. This is a gentle amphoteric surfactant that you'll find in all kinds of shampoos, facial cleansers, and body washes. This next ingredient is so basic, I'm not sure it should be included in the ingredient count. For more inexpensive wetness, you'll need 9.6 grams distilled water. This is another grocery store ingredient. I'm also including an optional ingredient here for a bit of color, just the tiniest amount of water-soluble dye. It's going to make these bars a really pretty teal instead of stark white. You absolutely do not need to include this, but I think it's a nice touch. Up next, to ensure the shampoo doesn't make your hair feel stripped and awful, you'll need 24 grams of a liquid oil. This is another ingredient you can really customize, and also one you can purchase at the grocery store if you need to. I'm using medium chain triglycerides, but other options include sunflower oil, safflower oil, or even melted coconut oil. Don't get too hung up on this part. If it's oil and it's liquid, it'll work. To preserve the bars, weigh out 3.6 grams Optiphen Plus. And lastly, got one more ingredient, something to make the bars smell fabulous. So I am using 1.2 grams Baja Cactus Blossom Fragrance Oil, but you could definitely use a different fragrance oil or essential oil instead. Just be sure it's safe for use at 0.5% in wash-off products. The scenting ingredient is another one that you can play around with to have some fun and customize the bar. I really like matching the fragrance and the dye for like a bit of a theme. So I thought teal and Baja Cactus Blossom was a great pair for this bar, but this one from my test batches pairs a pink dye with a Jo Malone dupe called Peony and Blush Suede, and this purple bar smells like Midnight Blue Citrus. You can also make an unscented bar if you want to, so just replace the fragrance with more distilled water. And that is it for the ingredients. So how do we turn all of that into bars? I've got some good news for you if you have ever made fresh pasta. This is very similar. Dump the powders into a medium-sized bowl and stir to combine. Add the wet things. If you're not already wearing your gloves, put them on now and then really get in there with your hands. Smush, knead, mash, and squeeze everything together like a kid with Play-Doh until you've got a smooth, workable dough. I recommend keeping the dough in the bowl and doing this in a relatively cool space. Around 21 degrees Celsius is fine. That's 70 degrees Fahrenheit for the Americans. I tried this on a warmer day, and between the heat of the day and my lights, it was around 28 degrees Celsius in my studio, and the dough was a lot harder to work with. Now that you can see the dough and kind of get a feel for it, it's time to chat about substitutions. This workable consistency is key to easily shaping these bars. And the key to this smooth moldable dough is the balance between the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients. You might not expect it, but swaps like using cornstarch instead of rice flour or powdered sodium cocoa isethionate instead of sodium lauryl sulfoacetate will throw off that wet-dry balance. So if you want to make a change like that, be prepared to do a bit of redevelopment work to get that wet-dry balance just right. The last step is transforming the dough into bars. So you can hand shape this dough if you want to, but I find smashing it into a hard-sided mold gives the best results. Leave the bars to dry for 3 or 4 days before using, and that's it. pH-wise, these bars will land around 5.8 when made as written, which is a good place for both our hair and the preservative we're using. To use a shampoo bar, massage it directly into soaking wet hair. Work up oodles of lather, rinse, and carry on as usual with conditioner, which you can learn how to make in this video here. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!